Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, I rewatched my childhood VHS tapes and saw something in the background is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end if you dare. The first time I noticed it, I thought the tracking was off. The image was doing that familiar VHS wobble, horizontal lines shivering at the top like heat haze, colors slightly too warm, faces a shade more orange than they should have been. A living room from the late 90s filled the screen, my mother's old floral couch, the ugly beige carpet, a birthday banner that sagged in the middle like it had given up halfway through the afternoon. Then, for half a second, something in the background moved. Not in a ghost way, not even in a there's a monster way. More like a person stepping back because they realized they were on camera. I leaned closer without meaning to, my chair, legs scraping the hardwood. The sound was loud in the quiet apartment, one of those sharp, everyday noises that suddenly feels like you've done something wrong. "Did you see that?" I said, already rewinding. The VCR responded the way it always does, a whirring groan and a reluctant clunk, like an old man standing up from a deep chair. Screen went to snowy static for a beat before the image snapped back into place. I hit play. The birthday footage resumed. A kid's voice mine squealed about cake. I watched the background like my life depended on it. Nothing. Just the hallway behind the living room, dark because the overhead light was off. A narrow stretch of wall with a cheap framed print. The door to the basement at the far end, shut like it always was. I rewound again, slower this time, dragging the tape back with careful taps of the remote. Play, pause, play, pause. It happened again, barely there, but unmistakable. A shoulder, a head. Someone leaning into the doorway of the hallway, then withdrawing. My mouth went dry. Not fear, exactly. More like my body shifting into a posture of attention. Because if it was a glitch, it was a very specific one. I paused on a frame that was mostly static fuzz and motion blur, and there it was, a pale oval of a face, turned slightly, just enough to suggest a profile. The quality was terrible, the kind of terrible you can blame on cheap camcorders and old tapes, but it was still a face. I sat back and exhaled through my nose, slow, like I could reason my way out of it. Okay, fine. It's someone at the party, I told myself. A neighbor, my uncle. Somebody walking past. Except the hallway behind my mother's couch didn't lead to the kitchen or the back door. It led to 2 bedrooms and the basement door. There was no reason for anyone to be hovering there during cake, and the movement looked like hiding. I clicked the spacebar on my laptop, even though the video wasn't on my laptop. Habit. My hand hovered over the keyboard anyway, as if I could command the tape into behaving. I was still staring at the paused frame when my phone lit up on the coffee table. "Emma, you alive?" I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Yeah, you sound like you're whispering." "I'm not whispering. I'm just listening." "To what?" "Your haunted VCR." I gave a short laugh, but it came out flat. Emma had been making fun of the VCR since I texted her earlier, found my old tapes, borrowed a player. "Pray for me." "I'm watching one of the birthday tapes," I said, "and something is weird." There was a pause on her end. I could hear city noise behind her tires over wet pavement, the faint beep of a crosswalk signal. "How weird?" she asked, and her tone shifted into that careful half-serious voice she used when she was trying not to mock me. I glanced back at the TV. The paused image still held that blurry face in the hallway like an accusation, like someone's in the background, like they're peeking. "Maybe it's your dad," she said immediately. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest at the word dad. "He wasn't there." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." My voice sharpened, and I hated that it did. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "He didn't come to birthdays. It's not him." "Okay," she said softly, "the way you talk to someone holding glass. Maybe it's a cousin. Maybe your mom's boyfriend at the time. Maybe it's literally anyone." "It doesn't look like anyone," I said. "Which means what?" I didn't answer, because saying the real thought out loud would make it more solid, that it looked like a stranger in my childhood home. My apartment was quiet in that early evening way, the kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator cycling and your upstairs neighbor taking a shower. VCR's little digital clock glowed green, 12:00, as if it hadn't moved since the day it was built. "What's on the tape?" Emma asked, trying to steer me back to normal. "My 6th birthday," I swallowed, "in Portland, the old house on SE 28th. Your mom still lives there." "No, she sold it years ago. It's probably some tech guy now with a minimalist kitchen." I tried to picture it, someone else's shoes by the door, someone else's keys on the counter. It felt wrong. "Want me to come over?" Emma asked. The fact that she offered, just like that, loosened something in me. Emma never offered to do things she didn't mean. She lived across the river in a tiny place with bad parking and too many plants. She guarded her time like it was money. "I don't know," I said, and then the truth, smaller. "I feel stupid." "Stupid is fine," she said. "Stupid is safe." A small, reluctant smile moved my mouth. "You're not even trying to hide the joke." "I'm trying a little." She sighed. "Look, I can be there in 20 minutes if you want another set of eyes. Or you can take a video of the screen and send it to me." I tried. "It looks like garbage." "Because it is garbage. It's a VHS tape from the Stone Age." I looked at the tape box on the floor beside the TV, the cardboard soft from time, my mother's handwriting in blue marker. June 99, BDAY. Underneath it, in smaller letters, "Don't tape over." I hadn't thought of my mother writing that until now. Her hand moving carefully, labeling the moments she wanted to save. "I'll keep watching," I said, "just to see if it happens again." "Okay," Emma said. "Text me if it gets weirder." "I just told you it's weird." "Weirder," she repeated. "Like call the cops weirder," I snorted. "Yeah, I'll call the cops and tell them my birthday tape is acting suspicious." "Don't tempt me," she said. "I'll do it for you." We hung up. I sat there for a few seconds, phone warm in my palm, and tried to decide what I was actually feeling. It wasn't fear in a clean horror movie way. It was the irritation of a puzzle you can't solve mixed with something older, a nervousness that lived under my ribs like a small animal. The kind that made me check the lock twice even when I knew I'd locked it. My private flaw, if you want to name it, was that I never trusted my own sense of reality. Not fully. My therapist once called it hypervigilance. She said it like it was a technical term, something you could file and treat. For me, it was more like a habit of scanning every room for exits, for sharp edges, for the thing that could go wrong. It came from a few specific memories I didn't like to touch, and one big gap I couldn't fill. Years of childhood where my father was gone and my mother pretended it didn't matter. I'd been fine lately, mostly, but watching my childhood living room flicker on screen did something to my brain, like it had found an old file and started opening it without permission. I pressed play again. My mother's voice filled the room, younger and brighter, laughing at something off camera. On screen, she bent to adjust candles on a cake and shooed my small hands away. I could smell the phantom scent of wax and frosting, the way you can smell a memory when you've been inside it long enough. "Wait," Kid Me said on the tape. "Where's Uncle Mark?" "Uncle Mark's running late," my mother answered. The camera shifted. The hallway came into view again. I held my breath without realizing. Nothing moved. The shot wobbled as whoever was filming, probably my mom's friend, laughed and corrected. They swung the camera back to the cake. People clapped. Someone started singing. I forced myself to watch the faces instead of the hallway. Normal faces. People I half remembered. A woman with bangs, a man in a mariner's cap, my neighbor Mrs. Donnelly holding a paper plate like it was delicate. Then the tape glitched, just a hiccup of static and a brief stutter in the audio. And for a fraction of a second, the hallway was empty, 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 and then not. A figure at the edge of the frame. So close to the wall, they almost blended into it. Not stepping through, not passing by, but stationed there. Watching. I hit pause so hard the remote clicked loudly, like a snapped twig. The frame froze. This time it was clearer, not in quality, but in shape. An adult, taller than the doorframe behind them. Dark hair or a hood, hard to tell. One arm up, hand braced against the wall like they were leaning. And the strangest part was how still they were, as if they were trying to become part of the wallpaper. My skin didn't prickle. I didn't feel a dramatic chill. What I felt was an immediate, practical thought. Who was in our house? The tape wasn't a dream. It was recorded light, recorded sound. A real room, a real day. I took my phone and filmed the paused screen anyway, moving closer until the pixels enlarged into ugly blocks. The recording captured the VCR's faint hum and my own breathing. My hand shook slightly, which made me angrier than scared. I hated giving my body permission to react. I texted Emma the video. Then, because my mind wouldn't let go, I stood up and walked to my apartment door and checked the lock, even though I'd locked it an hour ago. The bolt was thrown. The chain was on. I still pressed my palm against the wood, feeling the solid resistance like it could reassure me. Back at the TV, I stared at the paused figure. There were reasonable explanations. A family friend. Someone coming out of the bathroom. Someone trying not to be on camera because they were self-conscious. But the posture half hidden, leaning wasn't casual. And if it was someone I should recognize, why didn't my brain supply a name? I grabbed the tape case again and turned it over. The back had more handwriting, SC28TH, BDAY. And below it, in a different pen, thinner, maybe my mother's later, do not loan out. I hadn't noticed that before. I looked from the handwriting to the frozen image on the screen. The old house, the closed basement door, that vague face that refused to become a person I knew. My phone buzzed. Emma, okay, that's not nothing. Send me a pic of the tape label plus any other tapes from that day. I stared at her message, then at the pile of other VHS cases stacked by the TV. There were more labeled in my mother's hand. Holidays, random afternoons, first day of school. The choice was suddenly clear, even if it wasn't comfortable. I could shut the VCR off, put the tapes back in the box, tell myself it was a glitch, and let the past stay buried. Or I could keep watching. I set the phone down, reached for the remote, and hovered my thumb over the rewind button, feeling, absurdly, like I was about to do something irreversible, even though it was just plastic and magnetic tape. Then I glanced at the other box on the floor, the one with unlabeled tapes my mother hadn't bothered to mark, and I realized I didn't even know what was on most of them. I sat back down, and I hit rewind. Emma arrived just as the sky outside my windows tipped from gray into that dull blue that means you're running out of evening. She didn't knock. She texted outside and then buzzed herself up before I could respond. By the time I opened the door, she was already stepping inside, helmet tucked under one arm, eyes scanning my living room like she expected it to rearrange itself while she wasn't looking. "Okay," she said, dropping the helmet by the shoe rack. "Show me." I didn't preface it. I just pointed at the TV. The paused frame was still there. The hallway. The figure pressed against the wall like it wanted to become part of the house. Emma stood close enough that I could smell rain on her jacket and that faint lemony detergent she used. She leaned in, hands on her knees, squinting. "That's not motion blur," she said finally. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you. It's also not clear," she added, "which means we're about to ruin your night arguing about pixels." She straightened and looked at me. "Play it." I did. The tape rolled forward, my mother's voice laughing, someone off-screen coughing. The hallway went empty again, as if it had never held anything at all. Emma crossed her arms. "How many times does it happen?" "Twice so far. Same spot. Same tape." "Yes." She turned toward the stack of VHS cases. "And the others?" I hesitated. "I haven't checked yet." "Why not?" "Because if it happened again, it would mean the problem wasn't a one-off." Because I was already doing the math in my head, counting how many childhood memories could be contaminated by the same question. Instead, I said, "I wanted another person here." She nodded like she understood more than I'd said. We picked a second tape at random. Christmas, '98. Emma insisted on documenting everything, so she propped my phone on a stack of books and hit record, narrating the date and tape title in a mock serious voice that made me snort despite myself. The footage was worse quality, dimmer. My mother's old house looked smaller somehow, as if the lens had shrunk it. Christmas lights blinked in soft, unfocused halos. We watched in silence, both of us leaning forward without acknowledging it. Nothing happened. No hallway figure, no suspicious movement, just a kid ripping wrapping paper too aggressively and a woman off-screen telling him to slow down. Emma relaxed a notch. "Okay, that's good." "It doesn't mean anything," I said too quickly. She gave me a look. "It means it's not everything." We checked a third tape, then a fourth. Different angles, different days. Same house, no figure. By the fifth tape, my shoulders ached from being hunched. Emma was perched on the arm of the couch, chewing on a hangnail, her earlier confidence thinning. "Could it be someone who only showed up that day?" she said. "That's what I keep telling myself." "Who was invited?" "Mostly neighbors. My mom didn't have a lot of people back then." I frowned. "There was Uncle Mark." "You asked about him on the tape," Emma said. "Was he late?" "Yeah." "Did he show up?" "I don't remember." "That's convenient," she said, but not unkindly. I rewound the birthday tape again, this time watching the timestamp in the corner. Emma paused it right before the first appearance. "Wait," she said. "What time was this?" I looked. "Early afternoon." "And when does the figure show up?" "Like 10 minutes later." Emma nodded slowly. "So whoever it is arrives after filming starts. That doesn't narrow it down." "No," she agreed. "But it does suggest they weren't already in the house." The thought landed wrong. I imagined the front door opening, someone stepping inside, unseen by the camera. Emma straightened abruptly. "Hey, you said your mom sold the house, right? Years ago. Do you know who lives there now?" "No," she pulled out her phone. "Address." I hesitated, then gave it to her. SE 28th was burned into me like a scar. She typed quickly, fingers sure. "Okay. Listing history, sold in 2014. Bought by an LLC. Renovated." Of course it was. "Here." She turned the screen toward me. A real estate listing popped up. Fresh photos, white walls, new floors. The hallway looked wider without the old carpet, but it was unmistakable. Same layout, same basement door, now painted a trendy gray. The listing banner blinked, "Open house, today 6:08 p.m. I checked the time on my phone. 6:42. "That's now," I said. Emma met my eyes. "Yeah." My pulse picked up, not in a dramatic way, but like a motor revving higher than idle. "Why does that matter?" "It might not," she said. "But if we want context, actual context, not tape ghosts, we have a window where strangers are legally inside your old house. I don't want to bother people. Too bad." She was already grabbing her jacket again. "We don't have to accuse anyone. We can just look. See if anything lines up. If the hallway feels the same. If the angle makes sense. And if it does, then we go home," she said. "And you sleep terribly, but with data." I rubbed my palms together. This was the part of me I hated, the part that needed to check. The flaw my therapist warned me about. I chased certainty, even when it made things worse. "What if this is just my brain?" I asked. "What if I'm projecting something onto static?" "Then we'll confirm that," Emma said, "which is better than spiraling alone." She had a point. She usually did. The drive over was quiet. Emma navigated while I stared out the window, watching familiar streets blur past with a sense of déjà vu that made my stomach tight. The neighborhood hadn't changed as much as I'd expected. Same corner store, same narrow sidewalks. We parked a block away, partly because parking was bad, and partly because neither of us said the obvious thing, that walking up to the house felt like approaching a witness stand. The open house sign was planted in the lawn like a small, cheerful threat. Inside, the house smelled like fresh paint and citrus cleaner. A woman in her 40s, realtor, name tag reading Karen, greeted us with a practiced smile. "Feel free to look around," she said. "Let me know if you have any questions." I nodded, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. Emma squeezed my elbow, subtle but grounding. "We'll just wander." The living room was unrecognizable without my mother's furniture, but the dimensions were the same. I stood where the couch used to be, orienting myself by muscle memory. The hallway stretched ahead, brighter now with recessed lighting. I swallowed. "Hey," Emma murmured, "you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. We drifted toward the hallway, pretending to admire the floors. Halfway down, Emma stopped. "Can you stand there?" she asked quietly. "Where?" "Right there," she gestured. "Against the wall." I did. The paint was smooth and cold under my fingertips. Emma backed up into the living room, holding her phone up at chest height. "Okay," she said. "Lean in, like you're trying not to be seen." I adjusted, pressing closer to the wall. From her angle, I could see it immediately, the way my shoulder disappeared, the way my face slipped out of view unless you were looking for it. A chill crept up my spine, slow and unwelcome. "It matches," Emma said softly. Before I could respond, a man in his 30s wandered past us, brochure in hand. He glanced at me, then at Emma's phone. He said, "Are you filming?" Emma lowered the phone instantly. Sorry, just measuring the light. He frowned but moved on. Karen appeared at the end of the hallway like she'd been summoned. Everything okay back here? Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. I grew up in this house. Just nostalgia. Her expression softened. Oh, that's always nice. Can I ask you something? Emma said, polite but direct. Has anyone ever mentioned someone hanging around? In the old footage or photos? Karen blinked. Hanging around, like an unknown person, I added. In the background, she laughed lightly. Oh, you'd be surprised what people think they see, especially in old videos. I nodded, embarrassed despite myself. We thanked her and headed back toward the front door. My heart rate was still up, my thoughts tripping over each other. Outside, Emma exhaled sharply. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, we confirmed the angle, she said. And that you're not imagining the space. That doesn't explain who it was. No, she agreed. But it narrows the question. We were halfway to the car when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Is this Daniel? This is Mark, your uncle. Your mom gave me your number a while back. Weird question, but are you looking at old tapes? I stopped walking. Emma turned. What? I showed her the screen. Her face tightened. That's not great. Another text came in before I could respond. Mark, I think there's something you should know. But not over text. Can you call me soon? The open house sign creaked behind us as the wind shifted. I looked back at the house, then at Emma. And for the first time since this started, I knew for sure we were past the point of turning back. We called Mark from the car because neither of us wanted to stand on the sidewalk any longer than necessary. Emma put the phone on speaker and set it between us on the center console. The engine ticked as it cooled, a faint metallic clicking that made the silence feel busy instead of empty. Mark, I said. There was a pause, then breathing. Slightly winded. Danny, yeah, hi, I wasn't sure you'd answer. I would have, I said, though that wasn't entirely true. You said you knew something about the tapes. Another pause, longer this time. I could picture him deciding how much to say, the way adults do when they're about to ruin a clean narrative. I was late to that birthday, he said finally, because your mom asked me to come by early, before anyone else. Emma shot me a look. Why? I asked. She was worried, Mark said, about a guy she'd noticed around the house. My stomach tightened. A guy like a neighbor? No, he said quickly. Not a neighbor. Someone she didn't recognize. The word recognize hit harder than stranger would have. Emma leaned closer to the phone. Did she call the police? No, Mark said. She didn't want to make a thing of it. She thought it might have been someone casing the place, or someone confused. But she didn't want you around it, so she asked me to show up early and keep an eye out. Did you see him? I asked. Mark exhaled. I saw someone once in the side yard. He took off when he noticed me. My grip tightened on the steering wheel even though the car was off. Did you tell my mom to call the police then? She said if it happened again, she would. And did it? Mark hesitated. Mark, Emma said. I don't know, he said. I stopped by a few times after that. Never saw him again. And then your mom moved on. Life happened. But the tape, I said. Why didn't she? She didn't know, Mark cut in. Not about that. The tape came later. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything he wasn't saying. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Because, he said quietly, if you're seeing something on that tape, then he was closer than we thought. After we hung up, neither of us spoke for a full block. Emma broke the silence. Okay, so, human explanation confirmed. That's not comforting, I said. No, she agreed. But it's real, which means there are records. That was attempt 1. Call Mark, get clarity, maybe get closure. What we got instead was context and a timeline that made things worse. Back at my apartment, the air felt stale, like it had been waiting for us. Emma kicked off her shoes and went straight for the kitchen, grabbing 2 glasses and filling them with water. "You look like you're going to forget how to blink," she said, handing one to me. "Feels like I already have." We sat on the couch and replayed the birthday tape again, this time with Mark's words echoing behind every frame. The figure's posture read differently now, not eerie, but purposeful. Someone checking angles, waiting. "Okay," Emma said, pausing the tape. "If this guy was around the house, there's a chance he shows up on other footage. Maybe not the same way, maybe earlier. That's what I was afraid you'd say." She gave me a tired smile. "You brought me here." We dug into the unlabeled box. That was attempt 2, brute force. Watch everything, exhaust the evidence. The hours blurred together, tape after tape. Afternoon footage of me drawing on the floor. My mother on the phone in the kitchen, voice tight in a way I hadn't noticed as a kid. Empty rooms. Ordinary days. At some point, my eyes started to burn. Emma rubbed at her temples and swore quietly when the VCR chewed the edge of a tape and spat it back out wrinkled. "Great," she muttered. "Technology failure, my favorite genre." We flattened the tape as best we could and kept going. Around midnight, we found something else. Not the hallway, the backyard. The camera was pointed through the sliding glass door, filming snow falling under the porch light. My mother's voice was off screen, talking to someone, Mark, maybe about cake logistics. In the reflection on the glass, faint but visible, was a shape behind the camera. A man's outline, taller than my mother, standing close. Emma sat up so fast she knocked her knee into the coffee table. "Pause," I did. The reflection was warped, doubled by the glass, but it was undeniably there. A head, shoulders, arms at his sides. "Is that?" I started. "It could be Mark," Emma said quickly. "He was there early." "Except," I said, pointing, "Mark said he was in the yard." "Not inside," she frowned. "Could be the angle, could be," I echoed, though my voice sounded thin. Then Emma rewound a few seconds and played it again. The reflection moved, not dramatically, just a shift of weight, a step back. Emma exhaled hard. "Okay, that's a lot." That was the misdirection, though we didn't know it yet. We spent 20 minutes spiraling about the reflection, about whether it meant the man had been inside the house with us, about how close he'd been. It wasn't until we noticed the faint outline of a coat rack just to the side of the camera that the pieces clicked. The shoulders lined up perfectly with hanging jackets. The head was a hat perched on top. We laughed then, sharp and shaky. "God," Emma said, "I hate my brain." "Mine's worse," I said. But the relief didn't last because the tapes kept offering half answers. Enough to keep us going. Enough to keep us trapped. Around 1 in the morning, Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at me. "It's Karen, the realtor." My heart jumped. "Why does the realtor have your number?" "I asked for it," she said. "In case we remembered anything useful," she answered, putting it on speaker again. "Hi," Karen said, her voice strained. "This is going to sound odd, but did either of you come back to the house tonight?" "No," Emma said immediately. "Why? There's a back window unlocked," Karen said, "and a light on in the basement. I know I turned everything off." A cold pressure settled in my chest. "I called the non-emergency line," Karen continued. "They're sending someone by, but I wanted to check." Emma glanced at me. "We haven't been back." "Okay," Karen said. "Okay, good." She hung up. Emma stared at the phone like it might ring again. "Danny, I know. That's not coincidence," she said. I rubbed my face, exhaustion crashing into me all at once. "It could be contractors. Someone else at the open house." "It could be," she agreed. But combined with everything else, we sat there, the apartment humming around us. The refrigerator kicked on. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded. "What do we do?" I asked. Emma hesitated, which scared me more than if she'd answered immediately. "There's one more thing we haven't done," she said slowly. I knew what she meant before she said it. "We haven't talked to your mom." My throat tightened. "She hates talking about that house." "I know. And if she didn't tell me then, she might tell you now," Emma said, "especially if someone is back there." I thought of my mother's handwriting on the tape. "Do not loan out," a warning, or a regret. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from the neighborhood app Emma had pulled up earlier. "Suspicious activity reported, SE 28th Ave. Police responding." Emma showed it to me without a word. The trap tightened. If someone had gone back into that house tonight, then whatever this was wasn't safely contained in the past. And if my mother knew more than she'd ever told me, then waiting wasn't neutral, it was a choice. I picked up my phone. "I'm calling her," I said. Emma nodded. "I'll stay." As it rang, I felt something settle into place, heavy and irreversible. Whatever my mother said or didn't say would change how I saw every tape we hadn't watched yet. There was no rewinding that. My mom answered on the fourth ring. "Danny." Her voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert in that mother way, like she'd been asleep with one ear open. "Is everything okay?" I looked at Emma. She moved closer, cross-legged on the floor now, her phone already in her hand like a safety line. "No," I said, "I'm sorry. It's not." My throat tightened. I found the tapes, the VHS tapes. Silence. Not dead silence. Just the kind where you can hear someone breathing and deciding what version of the truth to give. "You shouldn't be watching those," she said finally. My stomach dropped. "So you knew." Another exhale. "Danny, Mom, listen." My voice came out sharper than I meant. "There's someone in the background, in the hallway, on my 6th birthday tape, and the house is on the market right now," and I swallowed. "The realtor just called. Someone unlocked a window and turned on the basement light." Emma's eyebrows shot up. She mouthed, "Say that again." I put the phone on speaker. My mom didn't ask how I knew that. She didn't ask why I was calling at 1 a.m. She said very quietly, "Do not go there." I stared at the TV, still showing a paused frame from the birthday tape. That blurry figure that refused to become a memory. "We're not there," I lied. "A small one, a protective one. We already left." "I'm serious." Her voice tightened. "I should have gotten rid of those tapes." "Why didn't you?" Emma cut in, not unkind, but direct. My mom inhaled like she'd been hit. "Who is that?" "It's Emma," I said. "She's with me," a beat. Then my mom said, "Okay, good, don't be alone." The words landed like a confession. Don't be alone, not call the police, not lock your doors, but that specific thing. "Mom," I said, softer now, "who was he?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice sounded older than I remembered. "I don't know his name," she said. "I never got his name." My mouth went dry. "You never asked." "I never wanted to," she said, "because asking makes it real." Emma's expression flickered. That was my flaw too. The need to control reality by controlling what you name. My mom continued, words tumbling now like she couldn't stop them. "After your father left, I was tired. You were little. I was working. I'd come home and things would be moved. Small things. A chair angled differently. The basement door not fully latched. I told myself it was nothing, because the alternative was, her voice faltered. The alternative was that someone was inside my house, and I was alone with you. My chest tightened so hard it felt mechanical. Mark told me you saw someone, I said. In the yard. Yes, she whispered. That was the first time someone else believed me. Emma's jaw clenched. Did you call the police? I did, my mom said. Once. The word once carried the weight of regret. What happened? I asked. They came. She spoke like she was walking through the memory with bare feet. They looked around. They told me to change the locks. They asked if I had an ex-boyfriend. They asked if I was sure I wasn't forgetting where I put things. They were polite. They were tired. Nothing was broken. Nothing was stolen. They told me to call again if I saw him. And did you? Emma asked. My mom was silent long enough that my skin started buzzing. I thought, she said finally, that if I kept calm, he'd get bored. That if I didn't react, he'd stop. My stomach turned. That kind of logic made sense only when you were trying to survive. And the tapes, I asked. Why did you write "Do not loan out"? A small, brittle laugh. Because someone borrowed one. My throat went tight. Who? I don't know, she said, and it sounded like the truth. I thought it was Mark. Mark thought it was me. One of the neighbor kids might have taken it. It came back 2 days later on the porch. No note, just there. Emma leaned forward. 2 days later, after the birthday. Yes. And you watched it? I asked. I tried, my mom said, but the tape kept skipping, like it had been played too much, like someone had fast-forwarded and rewound the same part over and over. I felt a cold, logical line connect itself in my head. Someone, watching, rewatching. The hallway. A vibration startled us both. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face tightening. It's Karen, she whispered. My mom heard. Who's Karen? The realtor, Emma said quickly, and answered. Hi, Karen's voice came through in a rush, thin with panic. They're here. The police are here. But what do you mean, but? Emma asked. They said it's probably a squatter, Karen said. They found the window unlatched, and there are footprints in the dust down there. But they're not going into the basement until another unit arrives. They told me to stay outside, but I can see a crackle of wind through the phone. Karen sounded like she was walking. Karen, Emma snapped. Stay outside. I'm outside, Karen insisted. I'm across the street. I can see the basement window from here. The light is moving, every muscle in my body locked. Emma's eyes met mine. She mouthed, moving. Karen kept talking, voice shaking. Like someone's down there, like they're walking back and forth. My mom's voice cut through the speaker, sharp now. Danny, don't go there. Emma didn't even ask me. She knew. She saw the same thing I saw. The old house was becoming present tense again. And if someone was inside, the story wasn't going to wait for us to catch up. We're not going to confront anyone, Emma said, already grabbing her jacket. We're going to be witnesses. That's it. My mom's voice rose. No, Emma, don't. But the call with Karen was still live, and Karen said, one officer just went around back. Then a sound came through the phone. Not a scream, not something cinematic. Just a short, startled shout, and then a thud, like a body hitting something hard. Karen gasped. Oh my God, Emma swore and bolted for the door. I followed, adrenaline washing fatigue out of my limbs like a solvent. My phone was still on speaker with my mom, her voice repeating my name like a warning siren. The drive back to SE 28th took 10 minutes that felt like one long breath held too tight. We parked badly, half on the curb, and ran. The street was lit by porch lights. and the rotating spill of a police cruiser's red and blue. A few neighbors stood back in their pajamas, arms crossed against the cold, drawn by the magnet of something wrong. Karen was across the street, phone pressed to her ear, face blotchy. When she saw us, her eyes widened. "You came," she said, like she couldn't decide if she was relieved or horrified. Emma stopped just short of her. "What happened?" Karen pointed with a shaking hand. "The officer, he went around back," and then her voice broke. "He fell. I think he tripped. He got back up, but he was yelling for his partner. They're both in the backyard now." I looked past her to the house. The backyard gate was open. The basement window, small, near ground level, glowed faintly gray-blue. A flashlight beam swept across it, then vanished. Emma grabbed my sleeve. "We stay here," she said low. "We do not go in," I nodded, but my body was already moving, drawn by something primitive. Not heroism, not bravery, momentum. The need to see with my own eyes. The need to fix the uncertainty that had been chewing at me since the paused frame. We edged closer along the sidewalk, stopping at the front walk. The air smelled like wet earth and fresh paint from the renovation. The open house sign lay on its side now, knocked over. A male voice called from the backyard. "Sheriff's office. Come out now." Another voice, strained. "He's not responding. I can hear him moving." My skin tightened. Hear him moving, not see him. Just sound, that scuff of shoes. That scrape of something dragged across concrete. Like the VCR chair legs on my floor. Everyday noises that suddenly mean wrong. Emma whispered, "Danny, look at me." I forced my eyes to hers. They were wide but steady. "You go any closer," she said, "and you become part of this, not the tapes. Real paperwork, real consequences." My mom's voice was still on my phone, muffled now because I'd shoved it in my pocket. I could feel it buzzing with her words like a trapped insect. A sharp crack came from the back of the house, wood against wood. A door slamming. Then another thud. Karen made a small noise, like she'd swallowed her own scream. An officer burst into view around the side of the house, limping. His flashlight beam jittered wildly. He held one hand pressed to his forehead, fingers slick and dark. "Back up," he shouted. "Back up now." Everyone obeyed, even me. The second officer appeared behind him, moving slower, weapon out, but not raised. His face was pale under the streetlight. "Someone S in the basement," the second officer yelled to his radio. "We've got an unsecured entry, possible assault, requesting backup, EMT." The limping officer spat, angry and embarrassed. He slammed the damn bulkhead on me. Bulkhead. The basement door. The one at the back, the kind you open from outside. Emma's grip on my sleeve tightened until it hurt. I didn't pull away. The pain anchored me. From somewhere inside the house below us, behind concrete, came a dull, rhythmic sound. Not a voice, not a moan, just a tap, 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 like someone testing a wall, like someone trying a latch, like someone letting you know they were still there. My breath came shallow. My vision narrowed around the basement window. The glow flickered as the officer's lights shifted. A third cruiser arrived, then another. A paramedic truck. The street filled with movement and radios, and the cold smell of exhaust. Emma leaned close to my ear. "This isn't your problem to solve," she whispered, but her voice shook. "It's your problem to survive." I believed her. I also knew, with sick clarity, that the past had reached out and touched the present, and no amount of denial was going to put it back where it belonged. An officer approached Karen, asking questions. She answered in choppy bursts, pointing, gesturing. Bing officer sat on the curb, paramedics swabbing his forehead, his jaw clenched in fury. A detective-looking woman, plaincoat, hair pulled back, walked toward the house, eyes assessing the windows, the yard, the crowd. And then she looked at me, not like a stranger, like someone clocking a familiar face from an old photograph. She took a few steps closer. "Excuse me," she said, voice controlled. "Are you Daniel?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Emma answered for me. "Yes," she said. "Why?" The woman's gaze flicked between us. "We need you to stay. We may have questions about the property's history." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a one-night break-in, not just a random squatter. This was connected. And as the dull tapping continued from beneath the house, steady as a pulse, I understood the point of no return. Whatever was in that basement wasn't going to stay a blurry figure in a hallway frame anymore. It was going to become a name, a report, a statement. Part of my life I couldn't pause. They got him out just before dawn. Not dragged, not tackled. He came out on his own, slow and stiff, hands empty, and held where everyone could see them. He blinked at the lights like he'd been underground too long, which he had, and squinted against the cluster of faces that had gathered despite the hour. He looked older than I expected. Not ancient, just worn down. The kind of man you'd pass on a sidewalk without remembering 5 minutes later. The tapping stopped when he stepped into the yard. An EMT guided him to the curb and had him sit. Another officer read him something I couldn't hear. The injured officer had a bandage taped over his forehead and a look on his face like he'd swallowed something sour and couldn't get rid of the taste. The detective, her name turned out to be Alvarez, kept glancing back at me like she was taking inventory. When the man was cuffed, she finally came over. "You okay?" she asked, neutral, professional. "I don't know," I said. It was the only honest answer I had left. She nodded like she'd expected that. "You're not under any obligation to stay, but we will want a statement. Today, if possible." Emma squeezed my hand. I hadn't noticed she'd taken it. They loaded the man into the back of a cruiser. As the door closed, he looked at the house once, not at us. Not angry, not scared, more like he was checking something off a list. The sun came up behind the rooftops, turning the street an ordinary pale gold. Neighbors drifted back inside. The sirens shut off. The whole thing began to shrink into paperwork. The house didn't look haunted. It looked vacant. That was worse somehow. They took my statement in a patrol car because it was warmer. I answered questions until my voice went thin. Names, dates, the tapes, my mother, the birthday, the hallway. Alvarez asked good questions. She didn't interrupt. When I didn't know something, she let the silence sit instead of filling it for me. Emma gave her statement after mine. Shorter, sharper. She stuck to what she'd seen and heard and didn't wander into theories. I loved her for that. The man's name came later, after they ran him through a database. He had a record for trespassing. A restraining order once, years ago, for a woman who didn't live in Portland anymore. Nothing that would have made him easy to catch back then. Nothing dramatic. He's been transient on and off, Alvarez told me. Jobs, construction, maintenance. He did some work in this neighborhood around the time your mother lived here. And the tapes, I asked. She hesitated. He admitted to taking one, said it was by accident. He brought it back when he realized what it was. What it was, Emma asked. A recording of a house he'd been in, Alvarez said. He watched it a lot. My stomach twisted, but it didn't feel new anymore. Just confirmed. They let us go mid-morning. I called my mom from the car because I couldn't stand the idea of her finding out from anyone else. She cried quietly when I told her it was over. When I told her he was in custody. When I told her she hadn't imagined it. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I thought I was protecting you." "I know," I said, and I meant it. That was the cost. She decarried it alone and handed me a lighter version that still cut when I picked it up. Emma came home with me. We slept for 3 hours, the kind of sleep that feels like falling into a hole. When I woke up, my jaw ached from clenching it all night. The VCR was still on. The screen was blue. I turned it off. In the days that followed, things moved the way they always do after something big happens. Slowly, then all at once. Calls from Alvarez. Forms to sign. A message from Karen thanking us and saying she'd be taking a few days off. The house went off the market. My mother drove down that weekend. We sat at my kitchen table with coffee neither of us finished and talked about practical things. Locks, therapy, what to do with the tapes. "I don't want them," she said, pushing the box away like it might bite her. "I'll keep them," I said. The words surprised me, but once they were out, they stayed true. "Not to watch, just to have," she nodded. We didn't hug. Not because we didn't want to, but because some things had shifted and we needed to learn the new shape of them first. Emma went back to her routine, but she texted me more than usual. Check-ins disguised as memes. She came over one night and made pasta and refused to talk about the case. We watched something stupid and loud and fell asleep on opposite ends of the couch. The almost ordinary part came back faster than I expected. Work emails, laundry, the building's fire alarm going off at 3 a.m. because someone burned toast. I flinched at the sound and then felt embarrassed about flinching. The tapes stayed in the box under my bed. Weeks later, Alvarez called to tell me the man had pleaded out. Trespassing, assault on an officer, time served plus mandated treatment. No trial, no grand reckoning. "It's done," she said, like she wanted me to believe it. I did, mostly. One afternoon, cleaning my apartment, I found the old tape label stuck inside the VCR flap. "Don't tape over." My mother's handwriting, firm and careful. Stuck it to the fridge with a magnet and left it there longer than I needed to. I didn't rewatch the birthday tape. I didn't need to. The image had already separated itself from the tape and lodged somewhere behind my eyes. The way a person can be present without announcing themselves. The way ordinary spaces can hold more than you think. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I hear a sound that reminds me of tapping. Pipes, radiators, someone upstairs pacing. It always has a reasonable explanation. I always find it. But every once in a while, I pause before I do. Not because I think something is wrong, because I know now that sometimes it was, and I didn't see it until much later. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind you.